Oops. My bad. Let me tell you guys, time zones are a tricky thing. I feel like there's time zone colonization that happens with Eastern time in this country, in America. And like I'm in mountain time. So I'm always doing like this subtracting 2 hours on any time I ever hear any form of time. That is with the exception of whenever I interact with people from central time zones from a distance. I tend to just speak to them in their time language. And this is what I've learned as a podcaster, as someone who, has to do these meetings from far away. I usually just refer to their time zone and we meet from there. Unfortunately for me, for him, and for maybe all of you guys, me and Zach were not communicating on the right time zone alignment. So we had a podcast scheduled for an hour ago that I wasn't planning on doing till now. So if you waited with bated breath, I am sorry. Hi. Maybe that's why I've always done the show, or for the last, 5 months, been doing the show as a Raw post show, as a pay-per-view post show, because apparently I can't keep the schedule. But this is the Nocturnal Knockout. I am Rob. We are a brass ring media podcast on the One True Sport YouTube channel and over there on the RVD Twitter. What is up? For those of you just joining for the first time on this new time slot, trying to figure out how the hell this guy in the flat brim hat ended up in your wrestling discourse, as I said, I am Rob. Normally, I join you guys after pay-per-views, after Raws. But I decided in the new season of wrestling that we're in, post-WrestleMania, that I wanted to change things up. I'll still be checking in with you guys time to time, post-pay-per-views. But really, I want to get back to the origins of the Nocturnal Knockout, and it's just having some frivolous fun with the wrestling topics of the week and having fun with it. Discussing stuff not that serious. Although we'll discuss all the regular wrestling topics, but we like to have a little bit of fun with it, talk a little smack. We'll get into sports on this show. We'll take it in a bunch of different directions. And for right now, we'll go to the start of Dynamite, but I don't know. Depends. If the viewership remains and we have a good show cooking, we may keep it. But I do understand you guys as wrestling fans probably want to get to Dynamite live. And so I get that. Do we need a super chat to get you? Yes, E. Yes. My watch doesn't work, so any super chats or regular chats are welcome, but the regular chats aren't going to help me get a watch. Oh no, I didn't hear Shannon Sharp audio leaked. I was aware of the Shannon Sharp stuff that broke on like Monday, and all that. It's a busy time for sports media right now, and it's funny because sports media is interacting with wrestling and wrestling media right now. And so it's all in the wheelhouse. I'm following all of that. I'm a junkie for news on sports media people, despite not having heard the Shannon Sharp leaked audio. Thanks for letting me know that, though. I'll be perusing through awful announcing a little bit later, figuring that out. So what's up, guys? How's life treating you? How's the post-WrestleMania hangover? I feel like we all have had a few days to compose ourselves, to decompress. We had an episode of Monday Night Raw. There was an edition of NXT last night. You're maybe prepping for Dynamite. You got a new era of SmackDown coming up. How are you feeling post-WrestleMania? It's really amazing, I want to say, what WrestleMania did this year. We, as a wrestling community, as a country, as a world, as a species, we are pretty darn divided right now. I think that's fair to say. We're not agreeing on a whole lot, especially on the internet, right? You never agree on anything on the internet. I think the whole point of the internet is so we can fight with each other. Like that's the whole joy, right? So we could just flame each other anonymously, tell each other how bad each other's ideas are, how bad their takes are, what bad people they are. That's what we use the internet for. That's what we use public discourse for. And so everything is polarized. That's all you ever hear. We're in a polarized society. You know what we're not polarized about? We are not in any way polarized about that WrestleMania main event. In fact, I got to give WWE credit. They are great uniters in this moment. Some people have different problems with the match and with the finish, but the one thing remains to be true is that everyone seems to have a problem with the finish. Everyone has a problem with the match. Nobody's happy. And that's nothing new. People are always unhappy, especially in the wrestling space, right? Again, we're here on the internet talking about wrestling. It's a pretty angry space. It's a pretty critical space. It's a pretty polarized space. And we never have the same solutions to anything. Isn't that a common problem in all of society? We always know what the problems are. We can identify the problems. We all feel the pain from the problems. But it's usually in the solutions that we tend to have our differences. But that's not even the case with this year's WrestleMania. No. Everyone agrees that the problem is The Rock. That was pretty universal across the board. The lack of The Rock, the injection of The Rock, just the general presence of The Rock, all of that has just got people so darn worked up and angry and in a real unified moment that I haven't seen in a while. It's been since, I want to say maybe like 2016, 2017, before like the Vince fans and the WWE diehards got really calcified. I think AEW played a role in that. And then there became this weird schism in between online WWE fans. But it's been a long time since a wrestling commentary community have all been this unified on the problems, on the solutions. It's been wild that it's been that unanimous. And as E is putting up in the chat, he's asking if I listened to The Rock's interview on the Pat McAfee show. Precisely, E. That's what I'm referring to. So let's talk about this McAfee interview. That's what I'm saying, all that to set up where we are and with this anti-Rock sentiment. And I got to say, for both faces right now of the corporate faces of WWE, the two of the three more well-known ones in Triple H and Dwayne The Rock Johnson, they are doing a fantastic job responding to criticism these last couple of weeks, aren't they? They just look like real pros out there. And hey, the WrestleMania did good. It probably set the gate records, all that. So it is what it is. They have some right to brag, and I'm sure like 5 months from now, all the pieces will be in place. All this will have worked out, and will really look stupid. But I don't got a time machine, so I'm just gonna deal with what I'm dealing with right here and in the now. And that media hit that The Rock did, that was amazing. Who the hell does that? And what I mean by that is, when have you ever heard of WWE doing a major mainstream media hit, one that's a little bit of cleanup, on a Tuesday? And not a Tuesday after a massive Monday Night Raw angle. I mean, like the Tuesday after WrestleMania. That's the day when everyone else is like trying to get home and just catch their breath and get a little bit. Tuesdays after WrestleMania, like if anything, they're reserved for the taping of the SmackDown after WrestleMania. And that's never really been a great thing. Like there's no iconic SmackDowns after WrestleMania. I don't know, it's NXT after WrestleMania now. That was pretty good last night, but whatever. You get the point. The Rock came in on a Tuesday. Now you can't tell me that all along Rock was sitting back and he was like, boy, when I clear my schedule, look at that Tuesday morning, I can go on with my great friend Pat McAfee that I'm supposedly texting the whole time that he's in the booth. I'm going to go on a Tuesday. Yeah, sure. That's why The Rock went on. No. The Rock did what The Rock does, or what The Rock's been doing. The one thing The Rock can't seem to really handle, and this is something he has in common with the H-Man, is criticism. And like I said, the criticism on The Rock this weekend, the last few days, has been near unanimous. Everyone agrees he was the problem here. So he has to go on McAfee to do a special kind of damage control. Now you could see a scenario where Triple H is on McAfee, or back in the day, Vince on one of these shows. Like, I don't want to make an analogy between like the tragedies or whatever at WrestleMania, but think like post some of the tragedies that have happened. And you'll see that's when you would see Vince and Linda and some of these people on morning shows. They're trying to do cleanup for the company. Now, The Rock is an executive with the company. He reminds you of that all the time. He wields immense power. But he didn't seem to be going on McAfee to stick up for the company or sell the company. He did a little bit of that, but he was on there to babyface himself. He was on there to make sure, like, he's in charge. He's amazing. He saved WrestleMania. But if you didn't like last night, that was on the other people. That really wasn't on me. I'm awesome. I'm The Rock. I'm the great one. I can't do anything wrong. But it's these guys. It's these guys that got a problem. And it's like, I love it. The Rock is amazing. For all the stories we've heard about everyone in the past, all the legendary politicians, the Hulk Hogans of the world, Kevin Nashes of the world, it happens largely behind closed doors or on very, very niche platforms, like, dirt sheet interviews and that sort of thing. It's rare that the grievances to this point are aired on ESPN like this, or this sort of damage control is done on ESPN on this massive platform on a freaking Tuesday. What I think we should do though is, being that the comments were just so infamous, I think we should check them out for ourselves. Let's listen to what The Rock actually had to say.
With the fans. So,
oh shoot, I got no audio on that. Give me 1 second. Here we go. Now I'll be able to get it to you guys. Don't know why I can't get audio there, but let me show it to you another way. And I know you guys have seen this anyway, so it's like I'm exactly breaking anything to you guys to show you the clip from the McAfee show. But I want to show you this specific clip just so you have a sense of what exactly I am referring to here. There we
go. With the fans. So I got a call about a month before Elimination Chamber. I get a call from Ari Emanuel, who we know owns TKO. TKO owns WWE. He's been my longtime business partner and one of my best friends for over 20 years. He said, we need help at Elimination Chamber. Ticket sales are a little slow, but beyond that, he goes, what we are finding is with Elimination Chamber, it's become the pay-per-view that's been interesting. Fans have had fun, but it's also the conduit to WrestleMania. And how do we create a Elimination Chamber that people must tune in to see? Ari, I got back to Triple H and Nick. We had a call. And I said, I have an idea.
And we all know what his idea was. It was a grand idea, right? But isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? So in that clip, he puts it on Ari Emanuel, but he still takes credit for having this grand idea. And then if we want to spin it forward, let's look at what he had to say about why he wasn't there on WrestleMania night. So the other main complaint that has just persisted this week.
And the best thing for the final boss, we've established this idea of Cody's soul. We can always come back to it. I did feel, and I made the call, I don't want to be involved in that. Step back. Let the final boss step back into the shadows. Let all the spotlight go to John. Let it go to Cody. Let's not make it about Cody's soul eventually or John's soul. No, let's let them do what they do. And I called John after Elimination Chamber, spoke to him, called Cody, and I said, I think the final boss's work is done. We've established it. We just pulled off the greatest angle in the history of professional wrestling, other than Hulk Hogan turning heel back in the 90s. I said, this is amazing. We have 6 weeks. Now, let's build. You guys go and crush it. And I'll be right there with you. And I'm always here if you need me.
Rock, you are not always there when they need you. They needed you Sunday night, Rock. You were nowhere to be found. You were supposedly on your couch in Hawaii, Rock. But that's great, right? Just build it. Come on, guys. Just build it. Just build it. I love The Rock. Love The Rock. I'm a wrestling fan because of The Rock. I am doing this show with you guys tonight because of like insults that The Rock had to Billy Gunn back in the year 2000. That's why you got to hear my voice now. So get mad at The Rock about that more than anything else. The Rock's amazing. Yeah, E, you get what I'm thinking of here and where I'm going. So what I decided to do is I got jealous of The Rock though. You know, he's sitting there in his palatial estate there. He's texting with Pat McAfee. He's changing WrestleMania plans and then not getting involved in them. The Rock is amazing. Love the guy. Love the guy. And what he's doing there, he's doing what we all like to do. So be honest. Would you rather take blame for something or find the person who's at fault? Find blame for someone else. That's what The Rock did there, right? He found a way to pretty much blame everybody but himself while also taking ultimate credit for being in such great control. Like I said, one of a kind is The Rock. But I decided I wanted to do what The Rock was doing. I wanted to just blame everybody. So what I decided is I have a few culprits that I want to blame for that disaster of a main event. Like I'm tired of talking even about that match, but like I feel like honestly, I felt The Rock added a few more days of discourse to that match. So you know what? I want to participate in what The Rock was doing, and I want to play the WrestleMania blame game. So I want to go person by person here, kind of like a Festivus, and I want to just tell everybody why they specifically are at fault when it came to this match. And if you have any suggestions for these people, why the finish, why the bad feeling after WrestleMania and the subsequent fallout has been what it's been, go ahead and put it in the chat. First up on the chopping block is the man, the guy right now in WWE. The guy who finished his story but like didn't read the next chapter. I'm going to say this guy, Cody Rhodes. Let's place some blame at the feet of Cody. Now, I get it. Cody probably gets the least amount of blame here because even as the year-long champ and the face of the company and all that good stuff, he probably, if we're being honest, has the least amount of power in this situation. Again, it's amazing that he's got the least amount of power for the position he's in, but he's got the least amount of power. Most amount of screen time, though. I'm not going to cry for Cody. Cody's going to cry for Cody. And he's been a great champion and a face of the company. But let's face it, the product has been a little stale since he took over as a champion. All that time that Roman Reigns was on top was a little more entertaining than Cody Rhodes' reign. Again, not all his problem, but he has played a role in it. And if he is the competent worker and competent promo guy out of everyone that was involved in this thing, then I guess he had like the responsibility to elevate other people. I mean, right? The Rock just told them, build it, and they'll come. That's all The Rock said to do. But how did that work for us? Oh, and one more thing. It's not his fault completely that John Cena is washed, but wouldn't a true like NWA style champ, wouldn't they carry like a broomstick to at least a 3-star match? Instead, we got like the likes of Dave Meltzer over here declaring it the worst main event in WrestleMania history. The guy who gave Andre versus Hulk like negative stars is declaring this worst. Well, I don't know. You make the judgment on that. Again, not Cody's fault that Cena is washed. Not Cody's fault that The Rock's booking all over the place. But the last few months of WWE television can somewhat be a part of that. Speaking of that opponent, though, and let's send Cody back. I think we've done enough. Now, E disagrees here. E says it wasn't a bad finish. Super Cena did exactly what he said he was going to do. It's not his fault. People didn't think he was serious when Cena has always kept his word. You sound like right out of The Rock's. You listened to what The Rock was saying on the McAfee show, and you internalized all of that, E. But you know what? Speaking of John Cena, what's he been up to lately? Getting his hair transplant to actually take, which of course, like that would happen for a rich guy where they get like a successful hair transplant. I mean, look what this thing used to look like, and you saw that on Sunday. It looks much better. But Cena, he wears the hat and he sports a hair transplant. But he's going to also have to wear this WrestleMania main event. If he's the supposed GOAT, then this one goes on his legacy, right? Rock's out there declaring him unquestionably the GOAT. He's knocked off the Mount Rushmore. Well, if he's the GOAT, then this is his Jordan with the Wizards era. Because maybe it's not his fault that he's washed. It's the fault of Father Time. But think about it. When was the last really good Cena match? And think about this in terms of his actual legacy of WrestleMania main events. For the last 3 days, there's been a lot of debate actually about what's the worst WrestleMania main event. Because I think even some of the ones that we think of that aren't that good or were underwhelming and this and that, they're still like a lot better, I think, overall matches than what we got on Sunday on top of the finish. So when you think about that, people have really been breaking down, well, what was the worst WrestleMania main event? The other one people seem to be going to is the other one that The Rock and Cena were involved in, or one of the other ones. And that was when The Rock faced The Miz at WrestleMania 27. All week on the internet, we've been getting the debate. What was the worst main event ever? Yeah, The Rock's involved in both, but there's another common denominator, a common competitor in both. It's actually you, John Cena. Big Match John over here. Big Match John stunk out the joint. Okay. I mean, I don't even want to yeah, I should go there. We're at the point where John Cena, you can't wrestle. And it's not even trolling anymore. He just can't wrestle like any longer. That's not the end of the sentence. It doesn't mean he couldn't wrestle in the past. He just right now can't wrestle. And again, it bothered me to hit someone on that point because, I mean, look at me. I'm like 3 times the size I used to be. Is that my fault? Well, yeah, that is. But aging and metabolism, as we talked about last week, that hurts stuff. That hurts stuff. But it's not just the in-ring stuff. In fact, that should get less criticism when it comes to Cena because, yeah, he's pushing like 50. Of course, he's not going to be as good in the ring. But what is Cena's specialty? Cena's specialty is supposed to be on that mic, right? And I think of a guy like Jim Ross, who would, for years, and he probably still does this. I just don't know what he's up to in terms of podcasting these days, but he would always go on this thing that the talent has to maximize their minutes. Well, John Cena's efficiency is that Jordan with the Wizards level of efficiency right now. The guy was on for 3 episodes of Raw, basically cut the same promo on a SmackDown. Yeah, that's horribly inefficient, John. So that's the blame you get, Cena. I would say go back to Hollywood, but we kind of need this run to continue. You're doing a great job of ruining wrestling, John. So shout out to you. It's always been your goal, and I like that you're finally able to accomplish this great feat. All right, someone else who deserves plenty of blame. Plenty of blame. It's, of course, the H-Man, Triple H. Triple H loves to tell you what a great job he's doing. I think of a guy who, like, nobody in the world completes self-affirmations quite as well as Triple H does. I mean, this guy, he just feels so good about himself. And he'll tell you how great he is and how great the company is under him and how much better everything is now and how dumb you are for being critical. Triple H is the best. I mean, he's like the main guy, the chief operating content guy who's in charge, except for when he's not, right? Except for when The Rock and Ari Emanuel and whoever just completely overrides him. And then he's like, I don't know what happened. I'm the gamer. Well, gamer, it's kind of on you that they were looking for a little bit of juice at the Elimination Chamber this year. It's kind of on you that everyone was really, really desperate to see The Rock, like the man they seem to have a little bit of distaste for. That's kind of on you as the guy who's allegedly in charge like 90% of the year. These are your stories that are going to be culminated here that have to peak. So maybe, just maybe, that victory lap you've been taking for a whole year, maybe it's time to reassess things just a little bit, Trips. You had a pretty good night on Monday, and I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt. You're not a bad booker. It's just, kind of like that photo, a little fat and happy right now, which is fine, but bubbles do burst. And I keep saying this, like, these are expensive tickets. WWE's asking a lot of their fans. This is a few months ago. There was a big concert in Vegas, one I had tickets to. It was major bill, and they didn't sell out, and it was amazing. So they had to cancel it because it just didn't make what they thought it would make. And these are major acts, and it makes me think, like, yeah, eventually people do stop paying for stuff. Now, we said that during the entirety of like the worst of the Vince era, but it can really happen, I think, in other subtle ways to just cool the product slowly. It'll never go away. I don't think they'll ever go out of business, but they need to be careful. They might not be as untouchable as they are. They're in a completely different structure than they were under Vince. So if they don't have it all together, and let's face it, we're in a pretty crappy economy with some real uncertainty probably ahead of us. The price gouging era of WWE, this one that Triple H is kind of the face of, needs to be better all the way around. Now I get it. He's the H-Man. He's in a bit of a predicament, right? He books intentionally slow, and it tends to be pretty quality shows, but it's hard to just always guarantee where you culminate them. I mean, a few years ago, you had no problem selling tickets to a Canadian Elimination Chamber. You just also happened to be pushing Sami Zayn at the time, and all that. So things are a little bit different. And it's funny, right? Because I think about everything Triple H said is a pushback before this match even happened. And all this said that there's this modern media company and all this, but like, is there another modern media company that just says, just keep watching. I know it's not good. There's storytelling in every medium. WWE kind of like they're the only medium that has storytelling. So their fans are irrational for not appreciating all the specific beats in their wonderful stories. Obviously, The Rock has to take a ton of blame here. We'll put him back on the stage there. But he's a great worker. Like I said, always trying to babyface himself, always making himself look like it ain't me. I'm cool. I'm the man. I told them to build it, and they will come. And I think The Rock's comments, though, they actually do reveal the real person, the real entity, I should say, that gets all of the blame. The Rock is hitting on something there. When you listen to The Rock's comments, he talked about getting the call from Ari Emanuel about the ticket sales at Elimination Chamber, about the juice at Elimination Chamber. And he pointed out something that I literally did my first ever show on this channel about. And it was about the So-So February pay-per-views and how that has come to be seen. And so they're looking for a way to juice tickets to Elimination Chamber. Therefore, Ari Emanuel put out the rock signal. Now, I don't know if that meant that absolutely he had to show up for that event or sprinkle a little rock dust or get involved with the boogie. I don't know. But the implication would seem to be he had to be advertised for this show, which again, there's a bazillion different ways to utilize the rock without maybe the biggest heel turn of all time, only to not really have a follow-through plan or a direct involvement in the WrestleMania season. So who is it that he puts the blame on? I would like to just say Ari Emanuel, but I think as a greater entity, if you look at this, who was really the one who is responsible is the corporate entity. It is, in fact, if I can find the photo, it's TKO. It's this current era of WWE and this specific iteration of corporate WWE that we're in. The real blame goes to TKO. Triple H and The Rock are part of that storm. They're very much involved in it. They are faces of that. But that is what it's going on here. Whether it's to juice the Elimination Chamber with this Rock Hotshot appearance, or the endless display of sponsorships we got this weekend, where it's like almost unwatchable, where these shows are once again going back to like WrestleMania 29 status, where they're these corporate presentations. We might be in an era of better booking than we were. We might be in an era that's safer for talent than we were. But we're in a different era of corporate WWE, one that's even different than just the stock market Vince McMahon era. We're in an era where WWE is just one piece of a portfolio that always needs to make money, that always needs to maximize for the shareholders, which is great if you're a shareholder, but it's horrible for storytelling. And while Vince was a menace before, at least he was a menace from the inside. At least Vince was still having to deal with the results of everything all the other weeks of the year. What we have now with the situation to a TKO, or what we could have, is just a situation where they're calling the shots from afar, and you need to get the biggest star here, and you need to do this, you need to do that, and storylines be damned. There's a little bit of precedence for this, even with the people in that photo. Go all the way back to 2016. The bald guy, the one on the right, not the bald guy on the left, the one on the right, the one that used to hate wrestling before he was literally in business with it. His company that he was the head of, Zuffa, the primary product in their portfolio was the UFC once upon a time. But they went off and sold to WME, IMG, eventually Endeavor, like the companies that kind of merged with WWE. Well, when that sale went down, all of a sudden UFC turned into like this hotshot promotion, where one month it was like McGregor versus Diaz. And then it was Holly Holm versus Jermaine Durandamy the next month, because they literally would have no stars left, the way they would pack up all these cards. And what it is they had masters to serve. And WWE has always had way too many masters to serve. That's why they're not really a wrestling company in the traditional way. But what they do have now that maybe even Vince didn't have is way too many toys at their disposal. It's one thing to have Vince doing these hot shot angles and these hot shot finishes. It's another thing for calls to be coming from corporate offices to get The Rock on TV, to juice ticket sales, to launch this big angle that's ultimately going to ruin the biggest show of the year. So good times are in. Good times. It's not all doom and gloom, though. In fact, I think, and the feedback that I've got from other people was, I think Raw was a positive this week, which, I mean, it took long enough. It took me not doing a post show for Raw to be a full positive this week. I think it started off weird, but then it turned into something that people enjoyed. And then by the end, people were really intrigued. that ending of the seemingly formation of the new Dangerous Alliance, or as we just have it now, Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker, that was an awesome way of freshening up the product and adding a little bit more to that night one main event, which had the bigger angle and became the way better of the two main events in hindsight. And it's great to see Heyman involved. Seth Rollins doesn't necessarily need a manager, but it helps. And I said it can, definitely help in the editing of the promos, and you get the feeling with Heyman involved. Even if he's not in creative, he still has creative influence, or, can help the talent with the ideas. So it does seem to be probably a positive, I'm going to say, for Seth Rollins. But really the big deal here, I think, is that the end result of this whole Dangerous Alliance, hopefully, is that we have a fully main event minted Braun Breaker. If we get that, then I'm going to say it's like mission accomplished. Breaker and Heyman, they're like such a natural fit. I was watching a little bit of Busted Open the other day, and Bully was just going on and on how, like, of course, Breaker ended up with Heyman and how perfect it is, and all of that. And it just makes sense. And of course, Heyman does a few things. He scouts talent that you might not see and finds the best out of him. He also embeds himself next to the best talent. That way he's always embedded with the best talent. Smooth operator, that Paul Heyman. And being managed by Heyman, it's a big deal, right? If you're managed by Heyman, it should mean that, like, you're on the main event, or you're at least on the cusp. And that's been the case for the big three of the Heyman guys in WWE. Lesnar, Punk, Reigns, they've all held major titles while Heyman was managed with them. They all had major runs, major unbeaten streaks in times of Heyman's management. And that was the case in different ways. And that's where Heyman really made his bones as a manager before ever coming to WWE, even before owning ECW. But not every Heyman guy ends up finding main event success. Just like any a long-time coach, there's a few losing seasons in there for Heyman. The only one ever really got him fired, but there are some losing seasons. It's not fair to put every failed Heyman guy on Paul, because it's usually not his fault. I think what we're going to find is that it's usually the fault of the talent. But a word of caution, just a pairing with Paul Heyman is not enough. So I decided it would be kind of fun to do after we had the big serious blame game there, is to relive some of the other Paul Heyman guys, some of the Paul Heyman guys that didn't quite reach the pinnacle. Now, guys like Kurt Angle and Big Show and RVD aren't really going to go on this list because they held major titles with Heyman, but they're not really like the true blue Heyman guys. And usually they were part of like these shorter angles that kind of went in and out. So I really wouldn't give Heyman a ton of credit for their success or blame for their failure. But what I would do is I would go all the way back to the start of Heyman's tenure in the company. If you recall, he comes in as an announcer while ECW is still in business. Again, smoothest operator we've ever had there. Somehow gets to get out of pain for all the bankruptcy stuff that he was involved in, gets a great job. The company goes under. He appears on TV in the role of like an ECW owner. It was great. Heyman found something really good to do there. Goes through the invasion. That angle wraps up, and he reemerges post-invasion, managing Brock Lesnar to become the youngest champion ever to beat The Rock. The rest is history. Well, it's at that point that they started using Heyman in these different roles. Now, initially, Heyman just kind of started managing other people as a part of the Brock feud. Now, good luck keeping up with the heel-face alignment in the Brock Lesnar Kurt Angle feud that also involved Paul Heyman around WrestleMania 19. I want to say, okay, Brock was a heel at SummerSlam, but he turned face in the course of the Undertaker Hell in a Cell feud. It was fully face by the time he faced Big Show, but then Paul Heyman turned on him and went with Big Show. And I have no recollection of how Kurt Angle got the belt off of Big Show, but he was the champion going into WrestleMania because he had that legendary match with Benoit at Rumble, so he must have got it at Armageddon. I'm not sure about that. I probably should have looked that up. Anyway, they have the big match at WrestleMania, shooting star press, broken necks, everyone almost dies. It's amazing. They're both baby faces after that. And then I think Lesnar sides with Vince to beat up Zach Gowen or something like that. Yeah, that's what it was. I think so. Eventually ends up back with him. Anyway, that was all that convoluted stuff. We wonder why the ratings were like some of the lowest ever, and why WrestleMania 19 is one of the lowest purchased ever. There you go. That was one half of like the biggest show of the year. But in that whole little time, we got like some embryonic Heyman guys that never amounted to anything. And I remember specifically these guys were actually talked up in a WWF magazine at the time. So that's why I'm bringing these guys into the fold. But do you guys have any recollection of this match right here? I think a lot of people remember Survivor Series 2003. There was the Buried Alive match was on there. There was the Goldberg Triple H match on there. There was Team Bischoff versus Team Austin in a faux retirement. Everyone remembers that. Nobody really ever talks about the culmination of the Angle and Lesnar feud, which I think, looking at this chart, if I remember correctly, yes, that's the case. Yeah, the alignments had already flipped. Angle was on the face side with a weird-looking JBL, proto-JBL, post-Acolyte JBL, with Benoit and Hardcore Holly and John Cena taking on Team Lesnar. A-Train, Big Show, Brock, and the two newest Heyman guys, Nathan Jones and Matt Morgan. Remember Nathan Jones and Matt Morgan? Again, I wouldn't have even thought of them as Heyman guys, but I remember WWF Magazine specifically hyping these guys up as like the next wave of successes that Heyman can have, and citing even everyone he managed in ECW to great success. Well, in case you haven't like caught on, this was not a great success. Nathan Jones and Matt Morgan were not great successes. They actually like left Matt Morgan in Australia. Think about that. Imagine if like Shinsuke wanted out of the company and they toured Japan and he just like never came back. Basically what happened with the Pride fighting legend, Nathan Jones. Matt Morgan stayed on a little longer. They gave him a stuttering gimmick for some odd reason. And then he came to TNA, at least had a decent career in TNA. He knew how to get on podcasts. That was his real skill in the 2010s. So you had wrestling podcasters often advocating for him. If we're being honest, I think it's because he went on their shows. So those Heyman guys like completely washed out. But Heyman was fine. Fine-ish. Because you have around the conclusion of that angle, you actually have him losing power creatively. And so the show itself suffered as a whole. And who he was managing suffered as a whole as well. Nathan Jones is a historic flop. I mean, the guy couldn't even make it to his WrestleMania match with The Undertaker. That's how big of a historic flop that Nathan Jones is. But that's not the only historic flop that's ever been declared a Heyman guy. Someone else who was declared a Heyman guy that I don't have a photo of, but is the one and only Heidenreich. Now, everyone remembers a lot about Heidenreich. Everyone remembers what Heidenreich did to Michael Cole in that one segment. Everyone remembers Heidenreich like reciting poems to little girls. Everyone remembers Heidenreich as one half of the Legion of Doom and winning titles. Everyone remembers Heidenreich wrestling Alabama Doink. People don't quite remember that Heidenreich was managed and brought in by Paul Heyman. Now, on paper, I think Heyman and Heidenreich makes absolute sense. But in practicality, it was a disaster. The whole thing was weird. I want to say they never did it. I think Heidenreich was the uncalcified or defrosted like Nazi character. They just never actually did it. I think that was actually Heidenreich. I think that's what they were going for. And remember, they were doing a whole power struggle of the dangers that Paul Heyman brought in with Heidenreich, Teddy Long trying to get him sidelined. That was the start of the Teddy Long era that lasted like 10 years on SmackDown. At least Heidenreich, though, it was a clean split. And Heyman got to go on to better things. Heidenreich never did. Heidenreich still stuck around, though, long after Heyman. That's unfortunate. It really was. And honestly, these post these immediate post Brock Heyman guys, I think they were always trying to recreate the magic that Heyman and Brock had. And again, we associate Brock and Heyman so much, but on that initial run, they're not together for that long. But Heyman was a very effective part of that presentation. And again, it seemed like he would be a great GM. But on screen, though, he's also the general manager. Even at times when he doesn't have power, he's a raw GM for a very short amount of time. You had all that going on in the mid 2000s. And Heyman eventually gets like sent to exile in OVW, where these recent stories where he establishes this relationship with CM Punk. That's where that happens. To hear Jim Cornette tell the story, it was a reward for Cornette to be in OVW, and it was like a punishment for Heyman. That's how he looked at things. But Heyman reemerges in a pretty big way a few years later with the ECW revival, 2005, 2006. He's kind of like the face of that in a lot of ways. And the start of that run was actually pretty awesome. Not the way it ended up, but the start of all that was awesome. And he was a pseudo manager of RVD. But then RVD and Sabu had to get pulled over by an officer of the law, and all of WWE history was forever changed for that. Think about all the dynamics that were at play in that situation. And like, think of how that would all play out today, or how much differently that could potentially play out today. Now, in kayfabe, because they RVD got suspended and all of that stuff, they made like Heyman on this crusade against RVD in kayfabe. Like Heyman's over here in kayfabe acting like a DEA agent, the way he hates RVD so much. He lines himself with Big Show to get the title, the ECW title, at least that part of it, off of RVD. And then Heyman aligns with all people, and there is no way, and I mean this, there is no way you remember that Paul Heyman was aligned with Hardcore Holly, right? All part of this angle, like to go against RVD. Everyone remembers the great match that RVD and Hardcore Holly had on that episode of Tuesday Night ECW, right? When Hardcore Holly got all those stitches in his back. It was brutal match. Well, that was like on behalf of Heyman. That was all part of that storyline. Nobody remembers that. Now, Hardcore Holly, he was already a veteran, and he actually had a little bit of success. I mean, he tagged with Cody Rhodes not that far after this. So I wouldn't say he was a total dud. But talk about ships passing in the night. And this was a real Heyman guy. I will say, though, I've always thought Hardcore Holly could have been a little bit more. And a real legit, like, thought out collaboration with Heyman, I think could have worked. But it was not to be. But you know who was another part of that angle? And I can't believe this angle was this deep. I really can't. But there was someone else that was a part of that angle. And this has to be the deepest cut on Heyman, guys. It's got to be. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Oh, no, I don't have a photo of this, but just know. Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Heyman managed Blonde Test. Jacked up, not that he was ever small, but jacked ECW Test. Heyman managed that guy in ECW. Did you even remember that Test was in ECW? And did you have any earthly idea that Heyman ever managed him? Well, as you recall or don't, Heyman's time in ECW ended because of the infamous December to Dismember pay-per-view, 2006. The only time the ECW brand was ever given its own pay-per-view. And Heyman was fired because he wanted Punk to win that match. You want to know why CM Punk is a Heyman guy? Look at that. I mean, talk about a skin on the wall on that one. Do you remember the competitors in that match? Let me pull up a really quick Wikipedia screen grab of that infamous December to Dismember. Yeah, Kelly and Tess was so odd. I can't believe that was like a real couple. She was so much like younger than him, especially at that time. That was odd. And no disrespect to Tess, I understand he's dead, so he can't defend himself. And I bet you in the like indie boom that we had in the 2010s, he would have had a great little run as like a veteran guy. So shout out to Tess. But he was unsuccessful as a Heyman guy. He stayed around the company a little bit. This was like he had left the company for a very short time, and then he came back with like the blonde short hair. That was kind of his thing. Okay, I've stalled long enough to find it. Let me pull up my share screen here. Let's look at the competitors from the December to Dismember pay-per-view. We had I'm not sure how I went from December to Dismember to that is the WrestleMania Wikipedia page. Let me just tell it to you. Bad at producing here. The participants in that match were CM Punk, Hardcore Holly, Rob Van Dam, Test, Big Show, and Bobby Lashley. So the only one of those people that was not a Paul Heyman guy on screen or off screen in terms of CM Punk was Bobby Lashley. Vince's pick, the guy that eventually won the thing and sent Heyman packing for a couple of years. So yeah, Heyman was somewhat invested in all those guys, and Bobby Lashley triumphed. I think Heyman would have been a great manager of Lashley at any point in his career, but it's way too much of a Brock retread if that ever happened these days. Okay, Heyman's gone at that point, right? Never to be seen again until Brock starts cutting promos. Do you remember the promo specifically that got Heyman rehired? You know, Heyman's never coming back, all this. But it was that promo where Brock just started talking about his feelings, which I don't think was very bad. It was just meandering. Now, I've been talking straight for 53 minutes. I know what meandering sounds like. Should I do that on this show? You know that feeling, that you're feeling? You're feeling that feeling because it's a real feeling. That was Brock's promo. I guess he slipped a little bit from 2004 when he was like, Goldberg, give me Goldberg. Brock can cut promos, by the way. He just occasionally has these slips. And so 2012, he picked up the phone. I don't even know if Heyman had like a choice in the matter, to be honest with you. But that's how he comes back into the fold. And you know, it wasn't even great at first. If you recall, it was weird. He was also feuding with Triple H. It wasn't that great until he beat the streak. Once he beat the streak, once Brock beat the streak at WrestleMania 30, Heyman was instantly a made guy. But let's actually rewind a little bit before that, because that speaks to all of the success that Heyman has had. And in the second run, Heyman has had plenty of success with CM Punk and Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. Again, all of them holding major titles, been involved in major angles, all the main eventing on the night of WrestleMania. Heyman's got some skins on the wall for sure. I need to get a different phrase. But how can we ever forget about one or two individuals? Two individuals in particular in this time period that he had a little bit less success with. Of course, I'm talking about Ryback, Curtis Axel, and Ryback. These guys should have a battle royal with Matt Morgan and Nathan Jones to see who the worst Heyman guys ever. No, actually, these guys would outwork the hell out of those guys. Never mind. Never. Maybe a shoot fight. Yes. A shoot fight. I want to see Ryback in a shoot fight with Matt Morgan. I'm sure like someone would book that. It's funny. So this year's WrestleMania main event, right? The night one, it's all been all this talk about Punk and Rollins and Reigns and the Shield and how Heyman brought them in and all of that stuff. Well, you know what the follow up to all that was? It was Rybacksel. That that was the culmination of the first split between Punk and Heyman. And we know we don't have to rehash all of this. I think Heyman referred to Ryback as the one guy that he managed that he felt would never make it, which is amazing. Hasn't exactly taken over wrestling on the indies like he said he was going to. I don't even think Curtis Axel was that bad. I think he was always pretty good in every role he ever did, and that impersonation gimmick he had was good. He just wasn't like the main event guy. I think in modern WWE you would have found a place for him. But what was like the deal with Ryback? So why were they a team? Why were they teaming with Heyman? Was it because of beanies? I feel like they just wore beanies inside. That was like the only point to any of that. Those were weird times. But then again, I say fast forward to 2014. Brock breaks the streak. Heyman's a made guy. And then we get to the final of the Heyman guys that just kind of didn't work out for him. And this one is a tricky one, kind of a bummer one, to be honest with you. Cesaro to me is the biggest failure of all the Heyman guys. And I don't think that's just recency bias. I mean, recency was freaking 11 years ago. But I really think Cesaro is like the biggest missed opportunity ever of the Heyman guy. And the story is pretty well known, but we'll recap it really, really quick. Paul Heyman has said this many times. The point of Heyman managing Cesaro had nothing to do with Cesaro. Had nothing to do with Cesaro getting the push or anything. It was simply an excuse for Heyman to come out every week and cut promos on behalf of Brock, reminding everyone that he had beaten the streak. It had nothing to do with Cesaro. Therefore, Cesaro wasn't elevated. He wasn't given more to do, or his win-loss record didn't improve, or even have like a feud with Brock, which seemed like that's where I was going. No. And this is right after he won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, when it seemed like it might actually matter. That was the era that they hooked these two up. And I get what Paul Heyman was saying. He needed an avenue to cut that promo. But that doesn't mean that like Cesaro had to not do anything and had to just be a perennial loser and you had to just go with that. Honestly, it probably soured the idea of Heyman guys for a little while. And Cesaro had so much more to give. Thankfully, he had a few good years actually in the company. He had a good run post this. So he actually rebounded from this and I think did okay. But that was his last best shot to ever be a main event guy in the company, or at least be close to the main event, challenging for the main event. And they think about the roster at that time, who was on top. There was plenty of great matches that Cesaro could have been having instead of freaking Kane and Big Show in some of those positions in that time period. He also has done pretty well for himself in AEW. So I'm not crying for Claudio. I'm just saying that was a huge missed opportunity. I don't know what's going to happen with Braun Breaker, because if you look at that list, really with the exception of Cesaro, many of those guys had a lot of issues that went beyond anything Heyman could or couldn't have done. And Cesaro was explicitly booked not to really get over. So I would venture to say that there's not a lot that Heyman could do in those situations. And he has a lot more potential with Braun Breaker. But you look at the track record, it's about 50%. So there's no guarantee that being with Heyman will actually do good for Braun Breaker. But I think it's a sign that the company absolutely wants you to succeed. Before we get out of here, I want to reference something that I found kind of funny over the WrestleMania weekend and the recaps and all that. Jey Uso, man, I can't like get over how polarizing Jey Uso is right now. Like I don't even know if it's genuine. Like I took issues with him winning the Royal Rumble to an extent. I took a lot of issues with the big part of the build headed into his WrestleMania match. But unlike so many people on the internet, I don't think his WrestleMania match was like the biggest travesty ever. I don't think him being champion is the biggest travesty ever. But it's certainly like rubbing people the wrong way. People are not reacting well to Jey being the champion. He's almost like rejected out of hand by the internet while being ridiculously cheered by the crowds he's seen, and people love the entrance. It's funny that it's different than the Cena or the Roman things because it's not this polarized reaction at all. The reaction to him live is not polarized in any way. The reaction to him online is not even polarized in any way. Everyone's in unison. They're just in different spots. Gunther's a babyface now, after he did that. I like the angle, though. I really do like the angle. But I think he's a babyface now. But one comment that I saw on the sea of comments was that Jey Uso's win was worse than Jinder Mahal winning the title. And I'm like, I'm not the biggest Jey defender, but I got to say something. I got to speak out against this kind of slander. Do you not remember the Jinder Mahal title win? Do you not remember the Jinder Mahal title reign and how bad that was? Do you not remember that they put that title on him so he could main event this one show in India, that they took the title off of him 2 weeks before they went over there? That was the Jinder Mahal title run. So I don't care if Jey Uso would have had the finger poke of doom match in his match with Gunther. That would have had nothing on the Jinder Mahal title run and title win. But I wanted to think of like other things. And this is where I need some help maybe in the chat here as we close out. What are some other things that weren't as bad as the Jinder title run? So think of stuff that is bad, but is not as bad as the Jinder Mahal title win and title reign. So I'm going to say, first off, and this might be a controversial take, that none of the Miz's pushes have ever been as bad as the one Jinder Mahal title run. The Miz may never have been looked at as a credible wrestler or treated as a credible champion, or you were never ever taken him seriously, and him being on top may represent the death of the wrestling business. But it still was as bad as Jinder Mahal. It still made more sense than Jinder Mahal. Jose 316 coming in the chat, and you're still in one for me that I'm going to say in a minute. Constable Corbin. Constable Corbin was awful. Constable Corbin was some of the worst TV you ever saw. It ruined a whole show for months and months, and they put the blame on him, and they ruined people feuding with him. But at least they didn't give him the freaking title. Okay? So Constable Corbin's run as Constable was not as bad at the Jinder Mahal title run. As E is saying, the Great Khali's title run, not as bad as Jinder Mahal's title run. Now, I get it. They had to substitute him in like his biggest matches. They had to put some of them on SmackDown. There was like too many enzymes going before that one match, the Punjabi prison match that he wasn't even involved in. But at least it made sense for him to be the champion. At least he was pushed strong. At least you could see some of the logic in it, even if he was a terrible wrestler. What's up, BKL? What's going on, man? Appreciate you. You know what else wasn't as bad as Jey Uso's title or Jinder's title run? Jey Uso's title win. You might not like Jey Uso, but he was literally in the main event at the show before he won the Royal Rumble. He might be 0-6. He might have been 0-6 in championship matches, but at least he was something in something. What the hell was Jinder before he got the freaking title? You put H in the chat, and that might be a typo. That might be something else. But I will say also, there is no Triple H run that is as bad. Jey Uso's IC title run. Is that as bad as Jinder's title run? No, Jey Uso's title run wasn't the great. Didn't defend it a lot. But at least it propelled him to the main event. Jinder Mahal's title run is the reason why you never saw him on TV again. He was like going after the 24/7 championship a year later. That's what the Jinder Mahal title run brought us. So before we start doing all this stuff, we start going all crazy. I know. Goldberg versus The Undertaker in Saudi Arabia is not as bad as the Jinder title reign. There you go. There you go. Post at 316. You win. I'm gonna have to disagree. Kane versus Taker versus Diaz and Saudi might actually be worse than the Jinder title reign. But I don't know. The Jinder title reign is awful. And it should never be forgotten. It's the darkest moment in WWE history. All right, guys. You're probably late for Dynamite. Thank you for playing along in the chat. Let's do this again next week. I plan on it being the same time. I would say stay tuned for time, but that didn't even help you today. So just keep it locked on. You see my socials down there. Go ahead and follow me. Twitter, Blue Sky. I may or may not check those, but it is a way to follow me. Keep in touch with me. You can at least follow, at least Zach will retweet me and you can know when the show is theoretically happening. And Zach is, of course, the head honcho over at Brass Ring Media. Go ahead and check out all of our stuff. Become a member on Patreon. Tons of podcasts this week with Tyler and Zach breaking down WrestleMania. And of course, shout out to One True Sport for putting this whole damn thing on. I get to share YouTube space with Arn Anderson and the Blue Meanie. Like how about that? And I'm here ranting about like forgotten Heyman guys. That is so awesome from them. So guys, I really enjoyed this. I love the new format. Talk to you next week.